So here are the answers for the Triple Biology Unit 2 Foundation Tier 2019 paper. The first question says, read the information about obesity. In 2015, 1 in 5 adults and many children in the UK showed signs of being overweight or obese. Obesity makes it more likely that a person will develop medical conditions such as arthritis and type 2 diabetes, as well as life-threatening diseases such as heart disease and cancer. There are more obese men than obese women, but high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes are 4 times more common in obese women than obese men. A diet low in saturated fat combined with regular exercise can be an effective way to reduce or avoid obesity. Use information to complete the table, write true or false for each statement. So we've got, in 2015, 20% of the population was obese. Okay, that is false. Obesity increases the risk of serious diseases. That is true. Obese women are more likely to be obese than men, to have cells in their bodies which do not respond to insulin, which is true. And then a healthy diet, a healthy lifestyle will reduce obesity, which is true. Complete the following sentence by selecting your answer from the words below. Hormones such as insulin are chemical messengers carried in the blood. In 2020, drug sibutramine was developed to help treat obesity. 10 patients in a hospital tested the drug for a month, and doctors observed that it resulted in considerable weight loss. Medical researchers then carried out double-blind clinical trial where 600 patients took the drug for 2 years. Patients in Group A received the tablets, and patients in Group B received a placebo. Take 2 differences between the trial carried out by the medical researchers and the tests carried out in the hospital. We have a larger number of people in trial by the researchers than in the hospital. Researchers had a trial that lasted longer than the hospital trial. State the meaning of the term placebo. So in Group B they had the placebo, so it's asking about. It does not contain any of the drugs. So it's a chemical or a substance that does not contain any of the drug. Explain why a placebo is necessary for trials of new drugs. Because we're looking, it's for a control, so we can ensure that any effects seen on the other patients are caused by the drug and the drug alone. Choose the letter A to D, which gives the meaning of the term double-blind trial. So double-blind trial is neither the doctor or the patient know whether the patient is in Group A or Group B, so whether they're taking the drug or the placebo. So the answer is C. Before new medications are tested on human patients, they are usually tested on animals in laboratories. It is now possible to test medicines using computer programs which can model the human body or use tissue cultures from human cells in petri dishes. State one advantage of using computer programs or tissue cultures rather than animals for testing. Well, there's no ethical issues. We're not going to be harming animals while testing. Fresh milk contains bacteria. Milk sold by supermarkets and is pasteurised and has been heated to 72 degrees for 20 seconds to kill most of the bacteria before it's bottled and stored. Students investigated the growth of bacteria in pasteurised milk, which they stored at temperatures of 10, 25 and 35 degrees. They took samples of the milk at regular intervals and placed them on the sterile nutrient agar to compare the growth of bacteria. The diagram shows their procedure. State why it would be important for each milk sample to be the same volume, and we're looking at a fair test or to get more accurate results. Describe how the loop used for spreading the sample could be sterilised and why the sterilisation was important. So to place a loop in the Bunsen burner flame is how we would do it, and to kill any bacteria to avoid cross-contamination. Okay, so we could put here to avoid cross-contamination. State what the students would do to the petri dish to ensure the aseptic conditions after the milk sample had been spread on the paper. So they'd cover it with a lid, and then they would seal it with tape to make sure no bacteria or anything can enter. The results of the investigation are shown in the table and graph below. Complete the graph by adding the scale and label for time, plotting the results of 35 and joining the plots with a ruler. So I labelled it, I did the scale, I actually just into the label, so time of storage, and it's in hours. That's a loser mark for not doing that. So you can see I've gone up and then joining the points with a ruler, and then I've labelled my line at 35 degrees. Describe how the number of bacterial colonies changes over time and how this is affected by storage temperatures. So at all three temperatures, bacteria increase over time, but at higher temperatures, it gives an even bigger increase in bacteria. Use the graph to estimate the difference in the number of colonies of bacteria between 10 and 25 degrees. So at 10 and 25, it go up by 15 hours, and I had 9.5, take away 3.5, which gives me 6 colonies different. In the investigation, 50 colonies were found to have grown on the agar in a petri dish. State how many bacteria would have been present in the sample of milk, and it would be 50. Food hygiene inspectors visited a restaurant in South Wales in the summer of 2010. They reported problems. The diagram shows some of their observations. Buckets of yogurts made from pasteurised milk in a store cupboard at room temperature. Close-up of a label on a bucket of yogurt, so store below 5 degrees, do not freeze within 2 days of opening. From the problems they reported, the inspectors concluded that the level of hygiene at the restaurant was so low that it failed the inspection. From the diagrams and your own knowledge, explain the scientific reasons for the conclusion drawn by the inspectors, and then write the answers in the table below. So, the storage temperature in the cupboard is too high. So as it's too high, it's going to allow for bacterial growth. Lids of yogurt containers. So as you can see that they are open. So if it's open, bacteria is going to be able to enter. Risk to the customer's health because it can cause infection and a good chance they can get food poison from the increase of bacterial growth. State how the skin defends itself from the body. It forms a barrier. It's our biggest barrier, our biggest natural barrier that we have. The diagram below shows a section through the human skin. Label A and B. So A is our erector muscle. There's our hair follicle here sticking out. And then B is our sweat gland. After playing rugby in warm conditions, Steve undergoes a session in a cryotherapy chamber. This is a small room where the temperature is very low. Describe and explain the changes that would occur in his skin in the cold conditions of the chamber. So, the purpose of the chamber is to reduce heat loss. Okay, so the erector muscles contract, and as the erector muscles contract, the hair becomes erect. Okay, so the hairs are going to stand up on edge, and they're going to trap layers of air, which is going to act as insulation. Obviously, our sweat glands are going to stop producing sweat, so there's going to be no evaporation of heat loss from our skin through the sweat. We're also going to have vasoconstriction, which is where the blood vessels under our skin are going to constrict, so they're going to narrow, and less blood's going to be near the surface of the skin, so we're going to have less heat loss that way, and then our body might even start to shiver. Whooping cough is a disease caused by a bacteria, and it can be very serious or even fatal in young children and babies. In the UK since 1950, young children and babies have been protected from whooping cough by vaccination, and this reached a target of 95% of children by 1970. By this time, there were very few cases. In 1974, so 4 years later, a medical journal published a report stating that the vaccine had damaged the nervous system in some children. Newspapers spread alarming information to parents throughout the UK, and the percentage of children vaccinated then fell to 30%. In 1978, the number of cases of whooping cough had risen to 2,000 by 2012. By 2012, it was 7,730. The antibiotic drugs we used to treat whooping cough were becoming ineffective. The negative media reports were discredited, and by 2017, the percentage of young children vaccinated in the UK had gone back up to 73%. The target remains, though, at 95%. Use the information to answer the question. State the scientific name of the microorganism which causes whooping cough. So in the question it tells us here is the bacterium, and it's the Bordetella pertussis. I can't say the Latin. Complete the sentence by choosing the words from the list. Microorganisms which cause infections carry antigens, The lymphocytes in the bloodstream then produce large numbers of our antibodies, which can destroy the infecting microorganism. Choose the correct answer to complete the sentence. The percentage of children vaccinated against whooping cough decreased after 1974 because a newspaper article which said the vaccine had serious side effects. Calculate the percentage increase in cases of whooping cough between 1978 and 2012. Use the formula. So, we had the increase was 7,000. It was in 2012 we had 7,730, and then we had 2,000 in 1978. So we take them away, which gives us our 5,730. We divide it by the number of cases in 1978, which is 2,000, and we times by 100, which is 287. State the evidence that the increase in the number of cases of whooping cough was linked to the reduction in the percentage of children being vaccinated. So at a higher vaccination rate, the lower the number of cases of whooping cough. When the vaccination rate is low, we then get a higher number of cases. By 2017, the number of cases of whooping cough had reduced. The NHS continued to encourage the vaccination of young children and pregnant women. Use the information on page 11 to give 2 reasons why it was necessary to continue to encourage these vaccinations. It's because whooping cough is fatal to children and babies, and the vaccination rates were below target still. We want to get them back up to that 95%. In some countries, the vaccination of children is compulsory. So just why some people object to the compulsory vaccination, it's just the parental freedom of choice and what we decide our children can have. The following 6 sentences explain why antibiotics become ineffective for treating whooping cough, but they're not in the correct order. Complete the list below to put the 6 sentences in the correct order by writing the missing numbers on the dotted lines. So they gave you number 5 first. So the doctors discovered antibiotics which killed whooping cough bacteria. The many doctors then overused the antibiotics and gave them to everyone. Some bacteria survived because they were resistant to the antibiotics. Those bacteria then multiplied rapidly. With that then, almost all the bacteria became resistant and they could no longer be used to kill the bacteria. Himalayan balsam is a non-native invasive species found in the UK. Himalayan balsam grows rapidly, outcompeting many local species. In laboratory trials, scientists found that a fungus could kill Himalayan balsam. Scientists investigated the possibility of using fungus to reduce the growth of the invasive plant on a larger scale. Say the term that describes the use of a living organism to reduce the growth of an invasive species is a biological control. We're using another organism to control the invasive species. The scientists marked out an area 16 metres by 16 metres on which many Himalayan balsam plants were growing and were evenly distributed. They then applied the fungus to half the section. They did not apply any treatment to the other half. After 6 weeks, scientists estimated the total number of Himalayan balsam plants by quadrat sampling in parts A and parts B. State why it's important for the quadrats are placed at random, and it's to prevent any bias, okay, and it's also to get then accurate results. Describe a sampling technique they would carry out using the quadrats. So they mark a grid, so we'd have the grid, roll a dice to determine the coordinates on where they're going to plot the quadrat, and then they would count the plants in each quadrat and then repeat for both areas to calculate the mean. For part A, the total number of Himalayan balsam plants found in 12 quadrats was 36. Calculate the mean number. So all I've done, there was 36 in total. There were 12 quadrats divided by 12 is 3 on average in each quadrat. The area of part A, so the height of it, if I look to the side, is 16 metres, but it's not 16 metres across, it's half of it, so 16 divided by 2 is 8, so it's 16 times 8, which is 128 metres squared. The estimate total number of plants in part A, so we've got the area is 128, the average number of, we'll be looking at the Himalayan plants, are 3, so 128 times 3 gives me an average 384 plants are in part A. The scientists carried out their investigation for further 5 times to be confident that their results were repeatable. The mean results of all their investigations were shown in the bar chart. State the conclusion that can be drawn from these results is that the fungus has reduced the number of plants. State how the scientists could test that the results were reproducible. So reproducible is someone else doing the experiment and getting similar results. So they could check other scientists' results to see if they have similar results. The scientists went on to investigate the effects of the fungus on many native plant species. State why this is necessary. So if the fungus does not kill other target species. State how biodiversity would be effective if the Himalayan balsam plants were not controlled, that biodiversity would decrease. Remember I said if they ask anything about biodiversity, it's always going to be decreased. The image shows human chromosomes. State the number of pairs of chromosomes present in a single body cell of the human. So obviously they're in pairs, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 22, and then they're the sex chromosomes for a male and a female, so there are 23 pairs. State what sex chromosomes are present in a man, so men are XY and females are XX. Complete the Punnett square below to show the sex chromosomes in the gametes of a male and a female parent and their possible offspring. So the male, X and Y, female, X and X. Then we have 50% being a girl and 50% being a boy. Height in humans is controlled by many genes as well as by environmental factors. Females usually reach their full height by age 18 and males by 25. Students investigated the heights of male and female airline cabin crew. All cabin crew must be between 1.58 metres and 1.9 in height and between 18 and 45 years of age. The students said that they expected the males to be taller than the females. They collected their data by selecting 7 males and 7 females at random and asking them to state their heights. They gave their heights in feet and inches and the students converted the data into metres. Complete by calculating the mean height. So the mean height was 1.76. I added them all up and divided by the 7 females. State the hypothesis that the students were testing, or that they were testing that were males taller than the females. State whether the results of the investigation support their hypothesis. Nope, because the female average height is greater than the males, so it doesn't support it. Give one way in which the strength of the evidence could be improved. They could obviously increase their sample size. And state one source of inaccuracy in the method was that they requested the height instead of actually measuring each individual person. Cystic fibrosis is a serious medical condition which affects the lungs. It results from a mutation in the DNA of a single gene which gives rise to a recessive allele. Explain the meaning of the term recessive. It's a form of a gene only shown when 2 alleles are present. State the effect of a mutation on DNA when it changes the DNA structure. From the family tree, state the numbers of 2 individuals who are known to be heterozygous. So remember, as heterozygous, the alleles are different. So we're looking at if they'd be big B, little b. And if we're looking, has to be 1 and 2 because they have a child with cystic fibrosis. So if they've got a child with cystic fibrosis, that child would be little b. So they have 1 from mum, 1 from dad, but the parents are unaffected, so they have to be big B, little b. Suggest what advice a genetic counsellor would give individuals 5 and 6 about the chance of them having a child with cystic fibrosis. So number 6 is a family from DNA testing that shown does not have cystic fibrosis. So if he hasn't got cystic fibrosis in his family, he would be big B, big B. The advice they would have is that none of their children would have cystic fibrosis because number 6 doesn't have a recessive allele. Cystic fibrosis usually treated by intensive physiotherapy, which can be very stressful. Medical scientists are now working to develop an alternative treatment called gene therapy. This process is summarised in the flow chart below. Lipid capsules are introduced into the lungs. State how this is done. It would be done using an inhaler. In order for this therapy to be successful, 2 further difficulties must be overcome. describe these two difficulties and suggest why therapy is not a permanent cure. So, difficulty is the genes to enter the lung cells, and the genes must function in the cells and must enter the DNA. Issue is that it's not a cure, as eventually the lung cells die and we constantly replace them through mitosis.